And another team that was able to get the job done was the Washington Commanders. And unfortunately for the Buccaneers, they played like you know, I'm gonna just leave it like that. But anyway, have the Buccaneers reached their ceiling? Obviously, Zach, we're gonna hit it from both angles. I want to start off with the loser here, the Bucs. Have they reached their ceiling?
I'm going to say no, because I do think there is one move they could make that could really raise their ceiling a bit. But some thoughts on this game quickly, Lil. I just got to say, again, it was a great game, very entertaining. I thought anyone could have taken it, but I feel bad for Baker Mayfield because I think he had a great season, 40 plus touchdowns. I thought he played pretty well in this game. The problem was he was the one that made the two mistakes that ended up costing them. The fumble right after their defense got off the field to force a Washington turnover on downs. That was obviously huge. The Commanders were able to take advantage of that, go right into the end zone. And when you look at later in the game, they had a 2nd and 1 with about 5 minutes left deep in Washington territory. They were not able to get a first down, largely because Baker dropped the snap on 3rd down, which enabled them to kick a field goal, and they never got the ball back after that. But look, the thing about the Buccaneers that really struck me throughout this game was I'm not really trying to criticize Todd Bowles. I think he's done a pretty good job this year. I think he's established himself as one of the best defensive minds in the league. We remember his game plan against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl a few years back. The Buccaneers have won the division each and every year. He's been their head coach. But I think we saw some moments in this game which reminded us, like, okay, I don't really know if this guy could be a championship level coach. His time management at the end of the first half was not great. He's a defensive guy, so naturally he's going to be very conservative. And it ended up costing Tampa Bay in this game, I thought. And look, I would not just be on this mic saying, fire Todd Bowles, if I didn't have or possible replacement in mind. But there have even been some talks about around league circles that, like, he could maybe retire after, and this could be it. And if I'm the Buccaneers, my point is I'm not trying to let Liam Cohen leave the building. Whether he's the offensive coordinator, whether he's the head coach of this team, I think this is the guy that really does have the ability to raise this team's ceiling. We saw what Baker Mayfield did this season, throwing 41 touchdowns, over 4,500 yards, 70% completion percentage, 106.8 quarterback rating. It was really the best season of his career, and he deserves credit for that, but Cohen deserves credit for that as well. We didn't really think it was possible that the Buccaneers offense could get better without Dave Canales, but it somehow did because of the hiring of Cohen. And the thing about the Buccaneers, too, the reason why I don't think they've reached their ceiling is because Jason Light continues to draft and bring in young players that are only going to get better. We just forgot that Chris Godwin suffered a brutal injury and he's out for the year, and he's probably going to not be a part of this team next year as a free agent. But here comes Jalen McMillan, who had a really nice few games towards the back end of the season. And I think he's a guy that's only going to get better and better. You have Bucky Irving, who I think is a star in the making and is about to be one of the better running backs in the league. You have a ton of young talent on defense. So I think that young talent is only going to get better, which raises their ceiling. And I think possibly making a change at head coach and just doing whatever you can to keep Liam Cohen in the building will also raise this team's ceiling as well. So as long as Jason Light and Liam Cohen are still in the mix, I don't think we've seen the last of the Buccaneers, and I think they're going to continue to get better.
I'm gonna touch on the Liam Cohen thing because I definitely agree there, but I'll expand on that in a few. Obviously, Jason Light, we have to give him the light of day when it comes to, recognition for what he's been doing as a GM, proven to be one of the best, in the National Football League, man. Just watching them, obviously, they went for it all with Tom Brady and signing, him and having those weapons, whom they drafted, by the way. Chris Godwin at the core of that. Mike Evans at the core of that. We know what Mike Evans is doing individually with his career, with his 1,000-yard seasons. All those guys are drafted, won a championship, and then they lost Tom Brady. Everybody's burying them. And they resurrect Baker Mayfield's career. They drafting well continuously. And so, when we thought they were going down, they came back up. But they was never better than that team that won that championship. So we have to be clear about that here, too. Because I do see a point. When you have a GM like that, you're going to hit on guys. You're going to draft well. And you may still continue to win. But we're talking about the ceiling here. And to me, they reached that ceiling. I think of them as a playoff team. I don't see Baker Mayfield. With all due respect to Baker Mayfield, I know I'm never, I haven't been a fan of his, but I definitely have given him respect for the last couple of seasons. But I'm not going to get ahead of myself here. He's not a guy that's going to win a championship. He's not a guy that's going to bring you to a Super Bowl. Yes, he could get you to the playoffs, but you're not going to win multiple playoff games with Baker Mayfield. Okay. And I do want to talk about Baker Mayfield a little bit more because even though I didn't think he had a terrible performance, he had a couple sequences in the game on Sunday night that he shouldn't have had, being the type of veteran that he is. Okay. And I'm talking about primarily that botch snap. Okay. And people may look at it and be like, oh, that's an accident. It happens. No, my guy been in the NFL for 7 years, including multiple playoff matches. That cannot happen. When you look at a guy like Jaden Daniels, he never been here before. He's a rookie. He didn't have no turnovers in the game. The Commanders had 0 turnovers in the game, and I'm expecting Baker Mayfield to play literally like Daniels in the sense that turnover free is the main priority there, because in a game as back and forth as this game was, clearly the best game this weekend, those turnovers are critical. Okay. Now, I do want to pick up to your point, Zach, about firing Todd Bowles and promoting Liam Cohen. I think absolutely that's something that they should do for a variety of reasons. Number one, we saw, Liam Cohen, Todd Bowles and Dan Quinn, both are defensive head coaches, by the way, right? And you said it, most defensive coaches are conservative. But guess what? That wasn't Dan Quinn. He wanted it. He was not conservative. He went for it on multiple fourth downs. That was the difference. The Buccaneers had ample of opportunities to go for it on fourth down. On the opening drive, they had a 4th and 7. And the Commanders, I believe, committed an offsides penalty that made it 4th and 2. You got to make it do what it do. But they opted to kick the field goal. Okay. And there was multiple sequences of that, time management, timeouts. You may want to call him Mr. Todd Bowles to get the ball back. I mean, come on, what are we doing here? Now, in regards to Liam Cohen and why I think they should hire him and let go of Todd Bowles, is because it's as simple as this. You don't want Baker Mayfield having to learn a third offense with a third coordinator in 3 seasons. Okay, that will kill momentum that Baker Mayfield is building, which is why you paid him, because of that momentum. You keep that momentum going. You give him some stability. But as far as the ceiling, there is no ceiling. The ceiling is capped. This is a team that can be very dangerous if given a chance to make the playoffs like they did. They still could have won the game, but they were the better football team. They should not have lost this game. Okay, they were the better football team. They were at home. There's a cap to where this team can go.
And that's why they have to make the change at head coach. And I'm not just saying that because Todd Bowles should be fired. I think he's done a solid job, but I agree. I think we saw last night, or 2 nights ago, I should say, that Washington had the better quarterback. They had the more aggressive head coach, and ultimately that's why they ended up winning this game. But Lil, I gotta say too, my main takeaway coming out of this game was not really towards the Bucs. Like, it was towards the Commanders and just how special of a quarterback and a team they have on their hands. And what really stood out to me was I think they won this game too, because they were able to stick to their identity, and literally they've been using the same formula all season to win games, being aggressive, going for it on fourth down, and really just putting the ball in the hands of Jaden Daniels and saying, we believe in you and we're going to ride you till the end. Whatever you could do, we'll live with it. And that's exactly what ended up happening. Daniels made a number of big plays late. I don't know if you have the film of him just juking that defender on, I believe it was like a 3rd and short late in the game, right before they kicked the game-winning field goal. That was nasty, filthy. I've watched the play about 10 times by now. And Washington has a special player on their hands. And they're a very dangerous team going into their game next week against Detroit, because no one expected them to be there. And even if they do lose, you have to be very excited, because this is probably the worst roster he's going to have around him, and they're only going to get better. And I think Dan Quinn deserves a lot of credit. That was a hire I wasn't necessarily the highest on. I thought they were screwed when Ben Johnson turned them down, but it turns out he was the right guy for the job. Cliff Kingsbury has done a great job as offensive coordinator, even after at one point earlier this season, we were having those same conversations about, oh, it's Cliff Kingsbury. Does his offense get stale? It's starting to get cold. Our team's about to figure him out. Nope. He was able to adjust and continue to put up points on the board. And I believe they showed that montage during the game. There have just been so many times late in games when Washington needs a play to get the win, and Jayden Daniels was able to deliver, and it's just so impressive from a rookie quarterback. And the thing also that makes Washington scary, we're talking about Baker Mayfield and the fact that Jayden was the better quarterback in this game. I think we've reached a point where it doesn't matter who the Commanders are playing. They could be playing Jared Goff this week. They could be playing Jalen Hurts the following week, or even Matthew Stafford. It doesn't matter who's on the other side of the field. Washington is going to have the quarterback advantage in that game, which is a scary sight for the rest of the NFC.
Yeah, I agree with our guy Zay. You know, it's unfortunate that you couldn't make the show today. That's a very valid point. I do agree with that. I think when you're playing not to win the game because you're trying to play mistake-free football and limit the amount of risk you take, you cap yourself. Okay. And that's what the Steelers did. They had a lot of opportunities where they could have been aggressive and kept the down and distance moving and gave themselves another opportunity on some drops that they didn't go for the fourth down. Clearly, the same thing is here with the Buccaneers and Todd Bowles and Mike Tomlin. They are conservative coaches that are primarily defensive-minded coaches, but that's not an excuse. Dan Quinn is a defensive mind, and he said, you know what? I got a quarterback that I believe in. So if what we are saying is that Todd Bowles doesn't believe in his quarterback, then sure, their ceiling is capped because you don't believe in that guy to save you on fourth down. Because look what Quinn is doing with Daniels. He believes in Daniels. He trusts that on the money downs, he will convert. And Daniels has given him every reason to believe in him. Okay, the same thing is happening with Jared Goff. Now, maybe it is strictly just a philosophy thing, and maybe it's not Baker Mayfield that, you know, Todd Bowles just does not trust him. Maybe it's just his philosophy of being conservative. And yeah, I guess I lean more to that way because I've seen him doing that with the greatest coach of all time, the greatest quarterback of all time in Tom Brady. There were definitely moments where they should have went for it, and they didn't, even with Tom Brady. So I'll stand by that. He's just conservative, a conservative idiot when it comes to these crucial decision making. But I do want to talk about the Commanders too, because how could you not? They won the game. Obviously, they're going to go up to Detroit over the weekend. Listen, man, Detroit, watch out. I'm just going to let Detroit know that, and I'm pretty sure they're aware of that. Zach, I said this before the playoffs started. The Commanders were dangerous for two primary reasons. Number one, on the money downs, they have been money. Third and fourth down, they have been money, and they have the veteranship in the locker room that has playoff experience that could be key contributors. And both of those sentiments that I laid out there was accurate in this game alone. And I'm going to go through each of them. All right. On defense, Bobby Wagner allowed himself to be ran over by Baker Mayfield in the first half. Okay, no problem. I'll shake that off and I'll recover a fumble. Now, it's not only about recovering the fumble, it's about being at the right place at the right time. It really felt like Bobby Wagner was just at the right place at the right time. You know, Austin Eckler, I want to play this clip with Austin Eckler because he had a quiet game. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't a spectacular Austin Eckler game. I thought the Buccaneers did a good job stopping the running game. They didn't really get a lot of yards on the ground. But look at this play here. This was almost an interception right here. We watching it right now. Look at that. That could have been a pick. But Eckler went, got the ball, and look how he turned it into a big game. That was late in the fourth quarter. I believe that was the final drive of the game. So even though he was quiet, he was the veteran to make a play to win the game. Make a play on the ball. And Bobby Wagner, the same thing. And Terry McLaurin obviously has some big plays down the field. I believe he had a touchdown as well. The veterans stepping up in the locker room. That's exactly why I said they were going to be dangerous. And because in the fourth quarter and in overtime, you trust a guy like Jayden Daniels because he has been doing it all year. 72% of his passes he completed on fourth downs with 12 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. Okay? That's a wild stat on fourth down and overtime as well. No rookie quarterback in the history of the NFL is doing what he's doing in those situations. So because they are efficient in a down and distance that is really low probability, especially fourth down, and because they have the veteranship in the locker room, guys that played in the playoffs before, this team will always be dangerous.
And a coach that's gotten to a Super Bowl too. We shouldn't minimize that.
Yep.
A couple other things. So Jaden Daniels is the fourth quarterback or the fourth rookie quarterback in the history of the NFL to win a playoff game on the road. And when you look at the other names, you see Joe Flacco, you see Mark Sanchez, you see Russell Wilson, and all those guys have had pretty solid careers. But Jaden Daniels is probably the most talented guy out of that bunch. And I think you could definitely make the case his future is the most promising out of that. The other thing that stood out to me too in this game was Tampa Bay really said, we're going to shut down Daniels as a runner. And Daniels, he did run the ball 13 times, but he only had 36 yards. Eckler, he had a good game receiving wise, made a couple of that big play that you showed, but he only had 27 yards on 8 carries. Brian Robinson, the guy that's had a really good season, he could not run the ball at all. He had 16 yards on 10 carries. Tampa Bay was even, they were spying Daniels with 2 guys at one point. So they were really prioritizing shutting him down as a runner, but he was still able to beat them with his arm. And one concern I've had with Washington is outside of Terry McLaurin, are the weapons good enough? And Daniels all year, another thing that he's done is he's made the guys around him better. He's elevated them, which I've always said is a sign of a great quarterback. And I think the hero of this game for Washington that no one saw coming was De'Ami Brown, a guy that I've been ragging on the entire season. He's had some brutal drops. He has 89 yards and a touchdown, huge down the stretch. I think he's another guy as well that deserves huge credit. That was an under the radar MVP for Washington in this game because he's been terrible all year, but saved his biggest game when they needed it the most.
Yeah. Last thing here, Zach, I want to segue into the question of will the Commanders pull off another upset in Detroit? And I would like to begin there because I do think I'm just continuing the conversation, but segueing at the same time. Dan Quinn was the right hire for this team. And a lot of people, including myself, I'm not going to say, yeah, I did it. No. I'm not going to make myself look like the hero here. I didn't like the hire in the beginning. I thought it was the worst hire of the cycle, but clearly he has installed a level of confidence in the team. Cliff Kingsbury has been a slam dunk hire at the coordinator position. They don't have a lot of talent. The Buccaneers should have won this game. They were a better football team on both sides of the ball. I mean, they dominated the line of scrimmage. You talked about the running backs not having a productive day. That's because they were stopped at the line of scrimmage. Obviously, the receivers is better. They are more talented, the Buccaneers here, but that didn't matter when you're well coached and in game management, decisions where you do have to coach and you can't fall back on your coordinators to save you. You got to make the executive decision to go for it. Dan Quinn has been doing that, and you got to give him credit for that. Now, in regards to this matchup, yeah, I think the Commanders are listen, I would not be surprised if the Commanders win the game. Now, in my mind, I'm going back and forth on who I want to go with. As of right now, I'm feeling Detroit because, it's obviously Detroit. They've been consistent all year. They've been here before. They're at home. But maybe after the show is over, I might tilt the other way. But to be honest with you, these two teams remind me a lot of each other. Just the way how Dan Quinn is coaching that team to be aggressive, to be confident on those third and fourth down situations is the same way Dan Campbell is teaching them as well. So you got that dynamic going on. And you got two good football teams. So I like what Aaron Glenn is doing. We'll see what he's able to cook up as far as blitz packaging, because I do think your best way forward is probably the blitz Jaden Daniels to kind of like accelerate his decision making. Because don't get me wrong, as good as Jaden Daniels played in this game on Sunday night, there was a red zone sequence in which that was before I believe they got the fumble because they went for it on 4th and goal. They didn't convert, and they were lucky to get back the ball.
That was the key sequence of the game, right? Like,
yeah, literally. But in that red zone, there was times where I thought he could have scored a touchdown. There was I forgot who it was. It was somebody in breaking. I believe it was Zach Ertz. I could be wrong. He was in breaking. You make that throw decisively. That's a touchdown. He opted not to go there. Then it was a couple. I believe it was Brian Robinson. He could have threw the ball on third down. He was open. He didn't, pull the trigger. So he was a little bit trigger shy, and I think the blitz really got to him. If you're Aaron Glenn, you do want to cook up some blitz packaging to try to get him off his game. But it should be a good game, and I can see it going either way.
It's interesting you say that because I don't know if blitzing him is the right move. We saw that work with against Minnesota for Detroit, and I think that along with the time off, I don't want to say people have forgotten about it, but that defensive performance on Sunday Night Football against the Vikings was so good by Detroit that, look, people are kind of over the fact that, they have so many injuries on the defensive side of the ball. I do think if you blitz Daniels and you give him that similar game plan that you gave to Sam Darnold, I don't think it's going to work as effectively. And I think that's pretty dangerous. I just think when it comes to Detroit, you have to spy Daniels. You can't let him beat you with his legs. And you just have to make a play or two on defense. Look, we know that defense is not the strong suit of this Lions team. If the Lions want to win this game, they're going to have to score at least 35 points. And honestly, I would be surprised if they don't. But their defense just needs to make a stop here, a stop there, a key play here, a key play there to limit this guy. And I think the pressure on this game, though, is on Detroit's offense because that's going to be why they win. If they are able to get the job done, they need Jared Goff to have a big game. They need Ben Johnson to continuing to cook. And there's no reason to think they won't. And I think that's what this game is going to come down to. Yeah, it's going to come down to.
They need to mix it up. Obviously, you cannot not blitz Daniels and allow him to pick your secondary apart. You have to mix it up. You have to disguise the blitzes. That's how you confuse a young quarterback, by disguising the blitz. That's why Steve Spagnuolo is as good in the game as any DC in the National Football League. And that's why every quarterback that goes up against Steve Spagnuolo is having trouble because he knows how to disguise the blitzes. You have to blitz, Daniels. You cannot leave him to carve your secondary up. Clearly, he showed that he can do it as a passer. You have to mix it up. So we'll see if they're able to do that.
Please like and subscribe for all the up-to-date content. You've been slinging shows left and right, slinging content left and right. Please don't miss anything. If you do, like, subscribe, leave a comment, leave a question, something you may want to answer, something you may have. All ideas are great ideas. Nothing's a dumb question.